Now, in order for you to adequately protect yourself, I need you to first understand what fear actually is. Too often I hear the word fear paired with the words paranoia and anxiety. And the problem is that there's nothing that could be further from the truth. Fear has nothing to do with paranoia or anxiety. Anxiety is worrying about things that are unlikely to happen, you can't control, or you're unwilling to do anything about them. And anxiety is an end in and of itself. Anxiety, you're not going to do anything that you're anxious about. It's just a feeling and it stops there. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to downplay your anxiety, and sometimes living a life full of constant fear can cause anxiety, but anxiety is not the same thing as fear. In fact, Jesus called anxiety a sin. Sorry, I don't write the mail, I just deliver it, so don't shoot the messenger. Okay, so fear is actually a response to imminent danger. Fear is one of your key survival signals. Fear is a good thing when properly managed because it keeps you from dangerous situations. Fear is a very necessary element to understand if we are ever going to adequately protect ourselves. Now, one of the most interesting ways in which fear and anxiety are different is that anxiety is a rational thought process. Anxiety is something that you come up with. You come up with reasons to worry. You come up with reasons to be anxious. You come up with reasons to be paranoid. However, fear is not a rational thought process. It is actually a part of your instinct. Now, all of you ladies have a secret weapon that has amazing capabilities, and it's called intuition. Now, intuition is something that's generally looked down on in our culture. We tend to be a culture that idolizes rational thought and logic, and we tend to look down on our basic instincts. Now, sometimes that's good. You can't always just assume that the first thought that comes to your mind is the best thought. However, you should always stop and ask, why did that thought come to my mind? Because intuition is a real thing. Now, what intuition is a thought process that takes the sum of all your past experiences and applies them to the present situation. It comes up with a solution based on an enormous amount of information, which is why it's going to be so much faster, especially when the stakes are high, to use your intuition than to actually use your rational thought process. Also, intuition isn't affected by your biases and by your beliefs, by your preconceived notions. Intuition isn't affected by that. It's simply a way of gathering information and applying it to the present situation, whereas rational thought process is very much affected by that. Let me use driving as an example. Are you terrified every time you get into a car? Why? Why are you not terrified every time you get into a car? Now, 14, 15-year-olds just starting to learn how to drive, you don't count because you terrify me. You should be terrified. Anyways, but essentially, when you get into a car, you are getting into this vehicle that is going to go 65 miles per hour, maybe 75, maybe 80 if you're in Wyoming, going 80 miles per hour down a narrow strip of pavement, and you're going just mere feet from other vehicles that are going at the same speed. And get this, these vehicles are driven by complete strangers to you, and these vehicles, not the strangers, weigh thousands of pounds. How do you ever make it out alive? And most of you are going to say, I guess I never thought about it that way. Exactly. It's intuition. It's not rational thought process, because if you had to think about all these things, you could never do it. Actually, you can do it. Ask anyone who's just learned how to drive. That's why they're so scared. It's because they're using rational thought process. And the more experience you have in something, then the more intuition will kick in. Now, to take that into the realm of trying to decide if something or someone is a threat, your intuition is actually perfectly designed for that. Why? Because you are an expert at human nature. How are you an expert? Because you're a full-time human, and you spend your time around people who are full-time humans. I hope that you don't spend your time around people who are half-time humans, though there are maybe. Anyways. So, essentially, you are an expert at human nature. And your intuition is full of this information on human nature. So, it takes the lump sum of all of that you know about human nature, and it applies that to whatever you think, or whoever in this instance, you think is a threat. So it's very important that we're listening to our intuition. There's one problem, however. Rational thought is often mistaken for intuition. People tend to get paranoid and they're watching everybody not everybody is a threat. You just need to be watching for actual threats. You shouldn't be assuming that everybody's a threat, because then you're going to miss the actual threat. How do we know when it's intuition talking and when it is rational thought talking? That is what we're going to discuss next time on this series of Ladies Self-Defense with Nebraska Farm Boy.